Well, in Lab 24, the sensory physiology lab, in this lab, you need to be familiar with some physiology tests of your sensory system. The first one, we're going to do the 2-point discrimination test. And in the class, we talk about the receptive field. You can have a big receptive field, small receptive field. And we use the 2-point discrimination experiment to identify, okay, your sensitive body part and insensitive body part. And the sensitive body part is the small receptive field one. And you can watch these 2 videos. It tell you, explain how they do the experiment. And the background knowledge, we covered this part in the class. So in your body, because you have limited amount of neurons responsible for the whole body, and they could not make the whole body equally sensitive. They have to pick some area, make them sensitive. They're gonna have small receptive field. And you're gonna have the area they are not so sensitive. They're gonna have a big receptive field. And when we do the 2-point discrimination, we put 2 points. In the sensitive body part, they have small receptive field, and each one gonna touch different receptive field, and they were being processed by different receptor and different neuron to the brain. And in your brain, all your brain have is the neuronal activity. So when they receive signal from different neurons, and the brain know, okay, it's the 2-point being touched. If this area have a big receptive field, you use 2 points, you touch the same receptive field processed by the same neuron. And when the signal go to the brain's all they have is the signal from the neuron. It's the same neuron generate electrical signal. So the brain could not tell, okay, is this 2 point being touched, because they are all the same. So your brain feel like there's 1 point being touched. And that's the basic concept of small receptive field corresponds with the sensitive body part. And the big receptive field corresponds with the insensitive body part, low resolution part. So they just change the distance of these 2 and touch your skin, and you report, okay, I feel 1 point being touched or 2 point being touched. And they can measure this distance. And the shorter the distance, they know, okay, this is more sensitive body part, and with the small receptive field. And so if you understand this well, so it's pretty easy for you to identify, okay, if we test these different areas, the back of your hand, your fingertips, your neck, your body, your calf, which part gonna have the smallest distance when you do the 2-point discrimination? And the answer, of course, there will be your fingertips, because that's the most sensitive body part. So in the class, we talk about your fingertips, and your face, especially your lips. These are the sensitive body part compared with the other. So the other areas, your neck, your calf, probably gonna have a bigger distance when you reach your discrimination point, your threshold. Okay, so that's the first activity. And the second one is the hearing test. So we're gonna test this part explains the auditory transduction. I will leave it to you. Now let's go to the cochlea part. And the cochlea, they extended. The whole cochlea analyze the sound from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. So on the whole cochlea, you have the hair cells. They can vibrate from 20 times per second to 20,000 times per second. And that's our auditory limit. And in the base part, they vibrate faster, so they can vibrate 20 kHz. And in the apical part, they vibrate 20 times. And after you use it for a few years or a few decades, excuse me, and which one gonna wear out first? This one. So when we get older, we gradually lose our high frequency auditory function. We could not hear 20 kHz anymore when we turn adults or older. Usually it's not a problem for us because our language, we care about the language, is in a few thousand hertz. So that's our sensitive body part, still pretty far away from this. But we can do the test. So you can click this and you listen to the YouTube YouTube video and you were gonna play the sound, and you can tell, okay, how old your ears are. So we found all of us, unless you are baby toddler, you can hear 20 kHz. I can tell you, none of us can hear 20 kHz. You can hear about 13, 12 kHz. And the older you are, you gradually lose this one. But it's not a problem for most of us. Okay, the third one, let's look at the auditory test, the Weber's test and the Rennie's test. So say if you have auditory loss, it could be the conductory. Conductory is the auditory system is all mechanical. Start from the eardrum to the 3 ossicles and to the perilymph, endolymph move, and to the hair cells movement. It's all mechanical. So if anything damaged, we call them conducting loss. So usually it means before it reaches the inner ear part. And after it reaches the inner ear, that's the hair cells transfer the movement mechanical force into the neuronal activity. And if that part has been damaged, it's the sensory neuron loss. So we have two different kinds of loss, conductive or sensory neuron. And how do we know which one? So we have two tests. The first one is the Weber test. And the Weber test is to tell, okay, do you have auditory loss? So they will use the tuning fork and they'll put it in the center part. And if one part sounds louder than the other, then you have the auditory loss, right? So they will do this experiment. I'll basically leave it to you. And the definition is, okay, if you have the conducting deafness in one ear, and you use the tuning fork, you put in the forehead. So we try to bypass the eardrum part. And if one ear sounds louder than the other, and that ear is actually have the mechanical conducting deafness, and you say why? And that's because that ear is conducting part, like some machine is broken. They have to make the neuron more sensitive. And that's why that ear actually sounds louder if you put the tuning fork in the forehead. It takes a while to figure this out, but it makes sense because you always try to pick up the sound, and when the conducting part is damaged, and the only strategy you have is make the neuron part more sensitive. And if it's sensory neuron deafness, and you will perceive louder than the other. Okay, so that's the Weber's test. So this one lets you identify, okay, you have some auditory problem. Then you use the Rennie's test to identify is which one. Is the nerve or conductance. So you will, and the video is here, so you can watch this and be able to identify, okay, what's the purpose of each one. And basically the Weber's test is to identify you have ear loss or you have the auditory loss or not. And the Rennie's test is to identify is the neuronal or conductive.